says, get that India. Big boy.
Maika, Sivo! Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell-Gillard!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me for a very, very special preview episode is my good mate Sixties and a mystery guest. I'm going to let you do the introductions here, Sixties, because I'm really looking forward to the return of, some might say, a prodigal son.
Yes, very much so. We're really looking forward to this because we're going to have the opportunity to catch up with Spiro over the weekend, and we thought, what better time to get him back on the podcast. He's been a busy lad in 2023, and that sort of kept him out of our regular podcast. But being the true Para supporter that he is, he said he's always available for the odd podcast. So we've called him on that. We've got him in for this week's preview podcast. It's our good mate from 2GB, Spiro Christopoulos. Spiro, welcome to the Tip Sheet once more.
Well, it's great to be with you guys. 60s, 40s, lovely to be back. I have missed you guys this year. I've been, as you said, very busy, but it's wonderful to be back. And I know we spoke about this probably a month or a bit more ago, 60s, about doing a little cameo. And I think what better time to do it than ahead of this weekend. It's a huge game for Parramatta in the men's. Obviously, the NRLW kicking off, heading into the finals now, and also ahead of the 2GB appearance at the Leagues Club. So lots to discuss. And I really appreciate you guys having me back on.
Well, mate, it's our pleasure as well. And, of course, all of this wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Big Swing Golf at Northmead and star partners, Real Estate Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. But we have to also mention Parramatta Leagues Club and 2GB linking up this Saturday from 1 p.m. until 10 p.m. What a stint that is. What a shift that is. The continuous call team with Spiro Christopoulos also there, appearing in Jack's Bar and Grill in Parramatta Leagues Club. Spiro, you must be looking forward to being part of that big show.
Yeah, we're pumped. We're really looking forward to taking the show on the road. We do it a couple of times each year. And around the same time last year, we did it at Penrith Leagues Club. It was a huge success, but I'm pumped. I'm thrilled that we're coming to Para Leagues, being a member of the Leagues Club, a member of the football club, and knowing the type of response and reaction we get to these types of appearances. It's going to be an awesome day, as you mentioned, 60s, 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Now, just to give everyone just a little bit of background, we're doing it to celebrate Leagues Clubs Australia's licensed clubs round. So it's a celebration each year. New South Wales Rugby League, obviously, try and pump it up. And as part of that, we take the show on the road from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Now, the structure of the show is that we'll have our panel from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Mark Levy leading the team. He'll be keeping all the boys in check. Obviously, Daryl Broman, the big man, who's funny both on and off there, and you'll see that on Saturday. Paul Gallen, the G-Train, as well as Shane Flanagan. So they'll be there for the main panel show between 1 and 5. We've got lots of footy. We do the hard stuff, but lots of fun as well. It's about fun and frivolity, we like to say. So expect an entertaining couple of hours there. And the beauty of what we do at these broadcasts is that in between the news breaks and the ad breaks, you get the chance to go and meet the boys and take a photo and engage with them. So if you're keen to meet the guys, and I think this is the best panel that we've sort of put together all year, having the 2016 Premiership winning coach and captain, as well as Daryl Broman and Mark Levy as well, who's he does it all on 2GB. It's an awesome opportunity to meet the team. So that's the structure from 1 to 5. And then at 5:30, we'll call the Newcastle and Melbourne game. And then at 7:30, the big game, Parramatta v North Queensland. So Matt Thompson will be along to call the early game, and Chris Warren in the chair to call the later game. Mark Piggy Riddell will also make an appearance, the former Eel, former Dragon, former Rooster. So he'll be along for the 7:30 game, but it'll be an awesome day. If you got nothing to do on Saturday, if you're looking for something to do, come down to Para League, support the guys. We'll have 2GB merchandise to give away. We'll have surprise guests as well. We've been working away at locking in some surprise guests to come along and speak to the boys. So make sure you get down there. It's an awesome opportunity. We did one at Taran Point at the bowling club end of last year, and that was a huge success too. So looking forward to seeing all the fans. I'll be along as well. I'll be I'm there mainly for PR, just to speak to some of the fans and hand out some merchandise and help out with whatever production's needed on the day. But I can't wait. I'll be there nice and early. I'll be there right from the start, setting up right till the pack up at the end of the day.
Mate, you mentioned if you haven't got anything on to get down there, I'd suggest if you have got something on, just put a line through it and get down there.
Yep, I'm with you, 60s.
And mate, I'll be down there. I want to be able to catch up with you. We caught up recently at the club, and we do bump into each other from time to time, but we don't get this regular chance to talk. So I'm looking forward to getting down there and catching up with you. I'm looking forward to saying g'day to Chris Warren, because Chris, when he was on the other station, I was a semi-regular on his show that he hosted. So
That's right.
Looking forward to catch up with him. He was, I know he works for the West Tigers in a capacity now, but he'd always been a really strong Eels supporter as well, and he grew up not far from where I grew up. So I'm looking forward to catching up with him. And I mentioned to you the other day about the little fun incident that I had with meeting Paul Gallen's mum.
Yeah.
And I think I might share this right now, because I might, if I get the opportunity on Saturday, I might share it with Paul himself. So just for our listeners, this was back when I was teaching, and I was doing a bit of a course on through the morning on this particular day, bit of professional development, and that meant that a casual teacher was put onto my class for the morning. So the particular casual teacher came up to my class before the start of the day, a lovely lady. We're having a bit of a chat. She looks around the classroom and she sees all the Parramatta gear I've got everywhere. I've got the reading groups named after Eels players. I've got posters. I've got Eels flags. I've got as much blue and gold as I can in a classroom. And she said, big Eels supporter. And I said, yes. And she said, our family used to be massive Eels supporters too. And as a matter of fact, my son, whenever Parramatta would lose, he'd cry. He wouldn't want to go to school the next day. And I said, hey, you don't jump off a team. What are you talking about? Used to be Parramatta supporters. You've got to stay Parramatta supporters. So we had a bit of banter about that. And then I said, look, can you do me a favour? Can you pop your name up on the blackboard so the kids know your name? And she starts scrawling, Mrs. Gallen.
G-A-L.
How good is that?
And I said, do you mean you're... And she goes, yes, I'm Paul's mum. And of course, then we did a bit more talk about football and about Paul and what have you. But yeah, that was quite an amusing day in the classroom. One that when the day started, I certainly wasn't expecting. But yeah, she was a lovely lady, and we had a few more talks during the day because, you know, naturally, whether it be when she was out on playground duty, I had to go out and have a bit of a chat to her while she was walking around, and then in the staff room. So yeah, I might try and share that with Paul if I get the chance on Saturday. But mate, really looking forward to that Leagues Club show. And I've got a feeling too, there's some prizes and stuff like that that'll be handed out. And Jack's Bar and Grill, well, that's obviously our happy place to be most weeks. Not every week. Sometimes we're there and that's after a loss. But that's the place that is really made the home of the Eels inside Parramatta Leagues Club. So we're quite happy for the 2GB continuous call team, the true professionals, to take over from the Cumberland Throw this week.
Well, you mentioned there the prizes. We will have a range of prizes and 2GB merchandise that you can get your hands on. I remember last year we actually gave away a couple of tickets to the grand final at the Tara Point outside broadcast the day before the grand final. I don't think we have GF tickets, but there may be something. There may be a signed jersey, or you'll have to come along and be part of the action to go into the draw to win some of our prizes. And just quickly, just a couple of quick things. When you think about it, you triggered something for me there, 60s. Gal always talks about playing his junior football for Wentworthville, for the Magpies and for the Parramatta District Rugby League. So when you think about it, Gal's a Para junior, and Flano's also a former Eel. He played first grade for Parramatta, and you know, there are some photos online of Flano suiting up for the blue and gold. So although they might be a captain and coach for the Cronulla Sharks when they won their premiership, they're captain and coaches and former Parramatta juniors. So it's, they're back to their old stomping ground on Saturday. And the other thing I wanted to mention quickly is that it's a very unique opportunity for rugby league fans to come and actually watch our call team call a game. It's rare that you get to get an insight into that, how the commentary works, the behind the scenes, get a bit of an insight. So come down and see it, 5:30 and 7:30. You'll never look at a rugby league game the same way again. I'm telling you now, because you look at the way the team engage and interact, and they put all their heart and soul into the call. So it's an awesome opportunity from that point of view to witness that happen. So yeah, a lot to look forward to. 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday, Jack's Bar and Grill, get down there, continuous call team broadcasting live.
Well, look, I've got all respect for the people who do this work as professionals, because Forty and I, we've done a little bit with calling lower grade games for the Eels with audio streams on TCT. I had a bit of a crack at it with the New South Wales Rugby League with calling Andrew Johns and Laurie Daly Cup matches involving Parramatta. And what I can say is that for those who are the professionals, you can see, when it's not an easy thing to do. It really isn't. And full marks to people who do this as a profession. I know everyone might have a whinge about certain TV callers or radio callers or what have you, and think that it can or should be done better. But until you have a crack yourself, you've got no idea how tough it is to do that job. So anyway, we're really big day, really looking forward to it, and looking forward to catching up with you there, Spiro. But there is plenty that we need to discuss before we even launch into our Eels preview. First of all, there's some massive reported money for the Fainu brothers to swap from Manly to the West Tigers. I mean, are you hearing that same amount, that across the years for 4-year contracts, $500,000 a year? Is that the sort of money you're hearing about as well, mate?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm not surprised in the slightest, because earlier this year I actually met with their manager. So their manager, Mario Tartak, he also has Josh Adokar as part of his portfolio and a number of other big-name stars, Moses Sully, Luke Thompson as well at the Bulldogs. So he's got a big portfolio. But when I spoke to Mario, he couldn't stop talking about Samuela Fainu. He reckons this guy is the next big thing. He's a prodigy. They reckon he's going to be a huge asset to the Tigers. But, he's been great through the junior grades at Manly. And when I spoke to Mario, he just sung his praises. He couldn't stop talking about him. And he reckons that he's the real deal. So I'm not surprised, because the raps that Samuela especially has on him, it's a massive coup for the Tigers. And, it's obviously hard when you're paying that much money for a bit of an unproven player, I guess, at first grade level. But given his track record through the grades, I think he's going to be a star. Latu as well, quality player. We saw them in action last Thursday night for the under-19s for New South Wales. And we know that they're quality players. A few clubs were bidding for their signatures. The Dolphins, I know, tabled an offer to them, but that was withdrawn last week. So there's a bit of a bidding war for these two brothers. Their other brother, Manasi, obviously had that huge court case, but he was a talented footballer during his time in the NRL. So it is, that's what I'm hearing, 60s. It's on the mark. I know Mario well, so in all my discussions with him, he's wrapped these brothers, and I think it's a good pickup and a handy pickup for the Tigers, but they're going to need a lot more than just the Fainu brothers to solve all their troubles.
Oh, yeah. And we'll talk about them a little bit more as a club. But, John, it's really it's quite an inexact science, isn't it, being able to predict how players will transition from junior football into senior football. But we've seen a bit of these boys in our coverage of junior representative matches. There's some talent there.
Oh, no doubt. Latu, back when he was in the Harold Matts, lit the competition up, and I think he ended up being player of the tournament or competition that year. They're big physical prospects. Samuel was a towering prop forward, and Latu's pretty well sized for a 5'8". So there's no doubting the physical capabilities there. But like you said, 60s, we've seen a lot of junior development sort of games in the pathways for Parramatta and beyond. And you talk about inexact sciences, and you can see some absolute physical monsters and specimens that have all the tools, but just that jump to first grade, it is so significant that you're always taking a risk when you sign an unproven rookie to a big NRL deal. But at the same token, I mean, the Tigers don't have much else as a recourse, do they? You know, the proven NRL stars are turning them back left, right, and centre. The handful of ones they did get in Api Coruscant and Azai Papali'i, in that sort of vein, I mean, Api's been pretty good for him, but it's pretty fair to say Ice hasn't been anywhere near his best. So you're left banking on these rookies. And look, I can't fault them.
Yeah. And Samuela in particular, I mean, he's already he's starting to prove already that he can handle NRL rugby league at a very young age. So I think they're on an absolute winner with Samuela. And matter of fact, I don't know of anyone that I've spoken to about this who's had a knock on Samuela as a footballer or doesn't even have the slightest shred of doubt that he's going to be a star NRL player. Also, Spiro, we've had Ethan Sanders, our own Parramatta Eels, Ethan Sanders. He's still contracted to the Eels for next year, but he's signed a deal with the Raiders, and the reported amount is around $350,000 a season. Are you hearing a similar amount? And what's your takes there on that move from Sanders?
Well, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago off air, obviously, 60s. I mean, we were there at the NRLW trial, and we spoke about this. There was a lot of interest in Ethan Sanders. He's a quality footballer. We've seen him through the grade. You guys have watched a lot of his football, and he is just an absolute star. I mean, at Parramatta, unfortunately, the reality is that he's stuck behind Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown, who were both signed on long-term deals at the club. So as much as I would have loved to see him stay, if he really wants to progress his career and he wants to play NRL, then he has to move. He had to move elsewhere. If you were to go to the Panthers, for example, once again, you're behind the likes of Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai, who I can't see moving away from the club. I know there's rumours about Luai. And then you look at Canberra, who were the other option. They've got someone there in Jamal Fogarty, who is probably towards the end of his career. They've lost Jack Whiten. He's obviously moving to South from next year. So perfect opportunity. And I think that under Ricky Stewart, he can really develop and grow as a player. He's fantastic, and you know his skill level is just outstanding. But I think going to Canberra, no distractions, out of Sydney, he'll take his game to the next level. And as soon as he gets that crack at first grade, he will just absolutely thrive. And you mentioned the coin. I mean, $350 a year. You know, for a halfback, you know, the reality is that in the current market, what they're demanding halfbacks, you know, and when you compare the market on what Sanders is getting, is probably on point for a rookie, you know, that around that 350 mark. And the reality is that if you want big name players or you want good players at your club, even if they're juniors, you have to throw money at them, because a lot of clubs have open checkbooks. They've got big recruitment teams. They're identifying talent from a young age. So I'm not surprised at all that he's gone to Canberra. I think that was probably the best fit for him. It's a huge loss for Parramatta, because you know he would have probably been the heir apparent to Mitchell Moses when he retired. But because Mitch has re-signed now, and obviously Sanders wants to start playing first grade, well, he had to make the move to Canberra. Who knows? He might move back to Parramatta eventually. But yeah, he had to go elsewhere. I think it's a good move for him personally. I think it's a great pickup for Canberra. And I think that, you know, he deserves the coin he's getting, given the current climate and given the asking prices for halfbacks in the NRL and at first grade at the moment.
Yeah, John, I'll just come to you on this as well. We spoke a little bit about this signing because it broke as we were doing the news podcast. But it's interesting because I just wonder whether there's an opportunity that he might even end up debuting in the NRL for Parramatta next year, because he is contracted for next year. And I doubt that they're going to release him for next year, because outside of him, at the moment, there are no current halfbacks as such. Josh Lynn is there, but he's probably around the same level of development, maybe arguably just slightly not quite at the same level of development as Sanders at this stage. But, you know, whether they go with Lynn as a halfback in New South Wales Cup next year remains to be seen. But how do you see this playing out? What's your thoughts on his departure, John?
Yeah, the two sides of the argument come down to whether you think it's beneficial for the Eels to be developing a top sort of or blue chip prospect for a rival NRL club, or whether you think it's important for the Eels to maintain their stocks as high as possible in order to win now or win in 2024. I tend to think that we hold firm for Ethan in 2024, and he ends up being, your number one backup halfback option. I know Dejan Arce is going to be contracted to the club next year, and he'll be another option in the halves below Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses. But if you're looking for an out-and-out halfback, a guy to come in and replace Mitchell Moses for state of origin, injury or suspension, the guy that's going to come in and give you that sort of similar kicking game and organisational capabilities would be Ethan Sanders. So, yeah, I think we hold on to him. That's the right course of action for us as a club, and also the right course of action for Ethan too. Serving his apprenticeship under Mitchell Moses next year is far from the worst thing he could do for his NRL career in the long term. So I think for both parties, that is an ideal situation. I think we should stay strong on that and keep him as our backup halfback option.
I hearken back to Stefano Utokumanu, who was signed at the start of the season by the West Tigers, and there were overtures to get him released early. The Eels held strong and said, no, we're not going to release him. They debuted Stefano in that season. He was needed in that season. He debuted, and then he moved on to the West Tigers the following year. It's not going to surprise me if it plays out that way. Of course, the other option is the Eels would just hold strong and just hold on, just have him in lower grades and don't play him in first grade. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. There's also a bit of news floating around or some rumours floating around, Spiro, about the Eels pursuing a return for Joey Lussick.
Yeah, there is. It's been around for a little while now. Dave Riccio had written in the Daily Telegraph today that Parramatta officials are in negotiations to bring Joey Lussick back to the club. They're hoping to strike a deal within the next 72 hours, and it could also include a contract for 2024. So it'd be for the remainder of this year as a backup because touch wood, if Brendan Hands goes down, who are you going to put into the hooking stocks? So they obviously have a spot left on the roster that they can fill before August 1. And a big reason why they want Joey Lussick back at the club is because he's familiar with the systems, the players, the coaching staff, and that's a huge lure for Parramatta. Rather than having to start scratch with someone, they're going to go with someone that's proven, that knows the systems. He was only at the club less than 2 years ago. And apparently as well, Jake Simpkin from the Tigers is on the Eels' radar. He's been discussed as an option. But given that Joey Lussick has been at Parramatta, he knows the way it works there, his prior knowledge of our style of play, well, they want to lure him back. So it looks like they're hoping to strike a deal so we can expect an announcement in the next couple of days. Who knows? He might even be ready and available and here for the Melbourne game, which is next Friday. But, he'd be racing the clock to get here in time for that. It'd be more sort of the last 5 weeks of the competition, our last sort of 5 games of the year, or 4 games of the year, really, plus finals. So he might be a handy pickup. I think you've got to have a bit of an insurance policy because you can never know what will happen with injuries. And given Hodgson's been ruled out for the season, I think it's probably the best bet. And they'd be able to get him for a decent price as well. He wouldn't be asking too much. So they can lure him across and have him there next year as a backup as well.
Yeah, well, they certainly can't afford to go further into the season with at risk of not having a backup dummy half. We mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Fainu brothers, but I just wanted to get your personal take on this, Spiro. The Tigers, the West Tigers, from a media perspective, like just when media's looking at what's circulating around in the NRL at any time, are the West Tigers the gift that keeps on giving?
I think that's the best way to put it, Sixties. I mean, there's always a headline about the Tigers, and part of this issue for me stems to the fact that there's a leaker within their ranks. There's someone there who's obviously leaking. There are a few rumours about who that might be and certain club officials and their relationship with journalists. But it is an issue. They are the gift that keeps on giving. And in a way, it's a shame because it would have been great to see the Tigers have a good year and get the media off their back, but they're staring down the barrel of 2 back-to-back wooden spoons, and that's not good enough. I mean, for a club that recruited in the off-season so heavily, and they put together a side and a roster that everyone thought would be competitive, having, a premiership winner in Api Coruscant, having a, grand finalist in Isaiah Papali'i, Charlie Staines going to the club as well, David Clemmer. They recruited, they brought so many players into the club, but some serious questions need to be asked. I mean, they brought Scott Fulton in now as their recruitment manager, but some questions need to be asked about some of those recruitment decisions, because they're probably paying overs for Isaiah Papali'i, given sort of what he's done this year. I know he had a great couple of years at Parramatta, which bumped up his asking price. And then bringing someone like David Clemmer, he hasn't been terrible for them, but, he's towards the end of his career. John Bateman as well, another one I didn't mention there. So much expectation around the Tigers, and they aren't delivering, and unfortunately, they deserve the pile-on in the media, because I feel that their front office isn't in order. Their executives obviously have lost a bit of control in Lee Hadjipantelis and Justin Pascoe, and there's not enough cohesion amongst the club. Obviously, the tension between Benji and Scott Fulton, that's now resolved apparently. But there's always a headline about the Tigers, and a lot of rumours and a lot of rumblings and whispers about the future of Tim Sheens and also the future of Benji Marshall at the club. So watch this space. But there might be, some interesting movements and developments in the weeks ahead at the Tigers. Don't be surprised.
Oh, look, I wouldn't be surprised if there's plenty of rumours out there which don't even get spoken about, that are just seen as, look, no, we don't want to touch this. Like, the media might look at it and go, like, I'm not going to touch this at the moment. We'll see what plays out there. There were predictions from former players, even before the season started, that there was going to be leaks out of the club. That was the interesting thing, that, like, the prediction wasn't how the club's going to go, but simply there will be leaks out of the club this year. And it's played true to that. John and I, it gives us a little bit of extra to talk about, it seems, most weeks in the news podcast. Mm-hmm. John, they are a gift that gives to us as well, aren't they?
I mean, I've got a bit of a crick in my knee for putting a boot in that many times this year, but they certainly do pump the news cycle. There's just something always going on there, and like you boys sort of alluded to, and sort of as adjacent to that, famous Jack Gibson quote, that winning starts in the front office, and they've got it wrong there. And it's no surprise that they've been, over a decade outside the finals now because of it. They have a messy front office, haven't been able to have any stability in the football operations as a result. And even when they do recruit well, like their recruits on paper were outstanding this year. And you've seen good efforts from, in particular, Api Coruscant, and Dave Clemmer's been all right. Ice has had some decent games as well, but just it's not enough. They just got so much wrong over there that the equation is so horribly imbalanced when it comes to finding a winning formula.
Well, Lee Hadjipantelis on 360 the other night said words to the effect of, we've significantly improved our roster. Yet it's not showing in performances to this stage, but it is a much stronger roster. And I'm thinking, it's an interesting statement that a significantly improved roster isn't showing in the performances. So are you sending a message there about the coaching? Are you sending a message about the individuals and how they're aiming up? What's your message there? Because if you've got a much stronger roster, but it's not showing in how they're performing, what's going on? Yeah, it just seemed like I don't know whether it was just a statement designed to placate supporters that good times are going to happen because the roster is stronger,
or was it a shot across the bow?
Worked against them, yeah. or is he firing a shot at someone there? So anyway, fellas, we've got two big matches now that we need to preview. So let's go to the Eels and Cowboys preview. John, can you run us through the team list?
Yeah, 7:35 p.m. kickoff up at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in Townsville. Eels were there last year, boys, in that incredible comeback victory in the grand final qualifier. Let's look at the Cowboys quickly. They've got a very good team, and they're they're in the midst of a really great run after a slow start to the season, much or not too dissimilar to the Parramatta Eels. Scott Drinkwater, who was on the cusp of Origin selection, he's their fullback. Sammy Valame and Murray Talangi on the wings. Valentine Holmes and Peter Hickey in the centres. Tom Dearden and Chad Townsend, who is their captain in the halves, Jordan McQueen, Reece Robson and Colin Hess are the front row, Luciano Leilua, Jeremiah Nane and Ruben Cotter in the back row, Jake Granville, Griffin Neem, Jason Taumalolo and Kulakefu Finafuyaki in the interchange. Extended roster, Zach Labour, Jermaine Tanoa-Brown, Sam McIntyre, Ben Hampton and Mitchell Dunn. Pretty good roster, boys. Lots of strike in that back line, a really solid forward pack, and some dynamic runners of the ball across Drinkwater and Dearden in particular.
Yeah, Spiro, can you take us through the players that really stand out for you and the ones that you think are going to have the biggest impact in this game?
Yeah, I think Scotty Drinkwater, it's hard to go past him at fullback. He obviously was called in the New South Wales side to be in the squad for Game 3. I think he's a quality player, and he's had an absolute blinder of a season. He's just finding the line very, very easily, and he was fantastic in the Cowboys' last match up in Townsville against the Tigers, where they put on that absolute shellacking. So he's a real target for me. We need to really shut Scotty Drinkwater down if we're any chance of restricting the Cowboys and, holding them back, I guess, from putting up a big score. So we need to be really crucial in our defence and our structures around Scotty Drinkwater. I think obviously Murray Taulagi is a real talent out on the wing. We've seen what he's capable of at an origin level for the Maroons, but in clubland as well. He's a quality player. In the forwards, it's a really strong pack when you look at it. Front row and back row, they've got, star power everywhere. Ruben Cotter off the back of his origin series, he's a real danger man. So, you want to limit his involvements and his impacts in the game. I think that the front row, if you're going to pick any sort of weakness, McLean and Hess, they're quality players. But if there's any part of their team which you can say is a bit of a weakness, you'd say it's in their front row. But Reece Robson, a fantastic hooker. He's obviously got, a fair number of games under his belt now. But in terms of the forward pack, I think Cotter's the man that you need to shut down. Having Taumalolo on the bench, what an asset. What an asset he is to be able to come on and provide impact. Who knows when they're going to bring him on. He'll have fresh legs. He'll be a huge in for the Cowboys when they bring him onto the field. And Jake Granville as well, playing in a milestone match. I think it's his 200th. He's just re-signed with the club. He's a versatile and a handy replacement as well. So they're the ones you need to look out for. Mainly Taumalolo on the bench, Cotter in the forwards, and Scott Drinkwater in the back line for mine.
John, having Spiro's just mentioned Jason Taumalolo off the bench, you've already got someone like Luciano Leilua who starts the game in the back row, and he's not always consistent, but he's got that X factor quality in that you don't know what he's going to produce at any time. And then they're able to bring on another huge X factor in Jason Taumalolo. That to me spells trouble for the Eels. But what's your takes on that?
Yeah, look, as much as we spoke about last week where the Eels had the advantage in the interchange over the Gold Coast Titans, it's going to be interesting to see what we can do this week with those second rotation players. Taumalolo, we're so used to him being a mainstay in the starting pack at lock forward, but he comes in here as an interchange middle. And I suppose you sort of match him up against Ryan Madison for us. And I know Maddo is doing some fantastic things for us, but it's still a high benchmark to set against. So you're looking at the other players on the interchange to pick up that slack. And yeah, the Gold Coast Titans, that back row, and this is a back row, Sans Hill and Lukey as well. We had even more depth to that edge cupboard of talent, really. So yeah, this is fascinating. Putting a lid on Cotter and Taumalolo will probably be critical for that ruck. Ruben Cotter, the reigning Wally Lewis medalist from the Origin win for the Maroons, just a ball of energy. He's undersized, but it doesn't really stop him. He just is so effective because he's involved tirelessly. And then, the luxury of bringing Taumalolo into a game and not burden him with taking up all the carries like he used to, where he used to, consistently churn out 200 metres. Now he can be more selective and effective in his runs. So putting a lid on those two players is probably the key for me when it comes to matching up in the forwards.
Yeah. Now, can you run us through the Eels team list?
Yeah, a couple of enforced changes for the Parramatta Eels on the back of those two suspensions coming out of the round 20 victory against the Gold Coast Titans for round 21. So obviously no Reagan Campbell-Gillard, no Maika Sivo. Reg out initially for 4 weeks of the old guilty plea. Maika was free, but with that failure to get the bid for a downgrade. He was bumped up to 4 weeks as well, so we're going to see them in a month. So the Eels line up like this with the captain, Quinton Gufferson, at fullback. Sivo still named on the wing, but we're expecting Hayes Dunster to come into the team based on what we've seen from the training galleries. Will Penasini, Bowie Simonson are in the centres, Sean Russell on the right flank, Dejan Arce and Mitchell Moses are in the halves. Ofahiki Ogden comes into the starting team to replace Reg. He'll partner Junior Barlaw as the two bookends for Brendan Hands. Sean Lane on the left edge, Bryce Cartwright on the right, Jermaine Hopgood lock forward. On the interchange, Luca Moretti, Joe Opengahi, Andrew Davey and Ryan Madison. Extended roster, we already talked about him, but Hayes Dunster is the 18th man. Makasi Makatoa, Wanga Blake, Kai Rodwell and Jack Murchie. Grant Atkins holds the whistle for this one, boys. You got Kennedy on one sideline, no other touchy listed, but Chris Butler in the box as the senior review official.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave that aside. The official. Spiro, the Eels' absences. First of all, what's that impact going to be like for Parramatta, and then secondly, who's going to bring it for us?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, no Maika, no Reg, disappointing. I mean, especially RCG off the back of his Origin campaign, he had a career high run meter figure for the Blues in Game 3. He didn't give up all night. You know, he was just fantastic, and he was really good last week as well against the Titans. Scored that opening try, and he was just really important for our win through the middle and the way that we played our football. In the forward. So he's going to be a huge loss for us. I think Ofahiki Ogden is a handy replacement. I'm a big Ofahiki Ogden fan. I think he's a quality player, but just Reg, just the passion, the heart that he runs with, and his impact through the middle is going to be missed. In terms of Sivo, I think Maika's had a pretty good year. I know people have got sort of mixed reviews. Obviously, he's scoring lots of tries, but just the way he's running the ball and the way that they've got him as second receiver, I think has worked fantastically well for us in terms of the meterage that he's making. And you bring in someone like Hayes Dunster that's only played 5 games this year, and that's for a reason as well. I mean, a selection choice there by Brad Arthur not to have him in the team and to have Sean Russell on the wing, it's specific and it's for a reason. So I'm not super confident with Hayes on the wing. He doesn't have the size that Maika has as well. I mean, we underestimate that at times, that his size is such an important part of our back line and his position there on the wing. So it'll be tough without those two there. I like the bench. I think having Luca Moretti is a good choice. Offhand Gowie as well, and Davey and Madison, I think, works well. It's a strong bench. It's no rival to having Jason Tamalolo on our bench. Our Matto's probably our equivalent. But, yeah, it's going to be a hard game. And we're going to talk about the conditions in a moment. I think our forward pack's strong. Having Lane and Cartwright in the second row. Cartwright's been brilliant this year. I think he's had probably his best year, in a little while since he was at Penrith. His career best season in my eyes. And Hopgood at lock is a great pick as well. So it's going to be tough, but I think that it's going to be hard for us in the background, in the back line. No Maika, and Reg will be missed through the middle, no doubt.
John, same question to you. How do we cope without those players, and who's going to bring it?
In a way, you could argue that the loss of Maika, while not insignificant, mechanically wouldn't change too much for us. We haven't been venturing too far wide down the left edge in recent weeks. A lot of our players being limited towards the back row, Sean Lane getting involved there, and a lot more play being directed down our right via Mitchell Moses, Bryce Cartwright, Will Penasini and Sean Russell. So perhaps the Eels can mitigate the loss of Maika in that regard by focusing more on, sort of edge of ruck stuff on the left, and then really taking it to the right with Mitchell Moses and Quinton Gufferson. In saying that, Maika, he's very good under the high ball defensively and can be a real difference maker in the red zone when he gets a chance to be featured downhill attacking the goal line. So that is a loss. For Reg, I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. He's one of the best props in the game. We're going to pay for his momentary brain lapse badly. A month out is huge, and while I agree with Spiro, Ogden is having a really nice season in the opportunities he's had in the NRL this year. Reg is, world class. So huge boots for him to fill. And also the fact that it's not a like-for-like replacement. There is no real like-for-like replacement for Reg in the back row, or in the front row, sorry. He's just got an incredible motor, plays such a relentless north-south game. Ogden, for me, profiles more to be sort of like Junior Barlow-esque. So I've got to be cognizant of that as we play this game, that we're going to have to lean on the rotation a little bit more. And so, yeah, replacing those two, tough. That's the way, I suppose, to put it in a word, tough, but especially Reg. I mean, he's so good. And I expect that Madison will probably be the guy to maybe pick up the slack there in that role as like a moonlighting, non-starting but primary forward. And I expect him to have a big game with big minutes in the void that is Reagan Campbell-Gillard's suspension.
Yeah, look, I think we'll miss Maika as much for defence as anything else. His reading with the jam defence, although that tackle was basically from jamming in, and that's got him in trouble. His defensive reads have been pretty good this year, knowing when to stay out, when to come in. You mentioned about his takes under the high ball. He's improved exponentially there. We've spoken about with Hayes. He's had struggles coming back from what was the most significant injury probably you'd likely to have with a knee injury. So it's no surprise that it's been a bit of a struggle this year. My concern is the Cowboys have the sort of impact players that I don't know that the Eels have, and especially seeing Taumalolo on the bench. Ryan Madison brings an impact off the bench, but it's not the same sort of impact. He's just such a consistently strong performer, Ryan Madison. When he comes on, he makes the tackles, he has good carries. But Taumalolo is an explosive player. And in all likelihood, I don't know whether it's going to be that he comes on for Leilua, but Leilua himself is an explosive player. So they've got great options, whether it's a like-for-like replacement or whether Taumalolo comes on at lock. Whatever the case may be for where Taumalolo comes on, he's going to bring that power, and that is what concerns me. Now, Spiro, we just touched on a moment ago the conditions. How are the conditions going to impact this game?
It's always a big one. When we head up to Townsville, I think we handled it perfectly the last time around. The heat would have been a much bigger factor playing there in September compared to sort of end of July. But it's warm, and I think that it will favour the Cowboys, no doubt about that. Last time around when we went up there, a lot of the focus was around adjusting and acclimatising ourselves to the weather and to what we were going to face in terms of humidity and temperature. So I think it'll play a factor. We've handled it well in the past, but that's when that's sort of been the front and mind of the focus. I think the front and mind of the focus this week is making sure that our combinations with Ogden and Hayes coming into the side are working well, and obviously putting in a more convincing performance, because last week we were good against the Titans. I think it was an important win and we played well, but we didn't put it together for the full 80, and they'll want to do that against the Cowboys because they're red hot at the moment. So as important as the conditions are, I think they favour the Cowboys. I think front of mind this week for us has been about making sure that our team's right, and that may play into the Cowboys' hands and disadvantage us a little bit, that we haven't focused around the conditions too much.
So how do you see the Eels looking to win this game? And then conversely, how do you see the Cowboys trying to win this game?
I think the Cowboys are going to try and win it through the middle. I mean, we've spoken about their forward pack. When you got Cotter, Nane, Leilua, Hess and McLean up front, plus you've got Taumalolo on the bench, they are really going to try and win it through the middle. Parramatta, on the other hand, and I think that Forty spoke about this as well, we've got to really utilise the running game of Mitchell Moses, because I think that that's been fantastic for us the last couple of weeks and in Origin as well. Whenever Mitch is taking on the line, I feel confident and I feel that, we're in a good place. And I think Gutho as well, a lot of responsibility on his shoulders to really step up and create some moments of brilliance like he did last week against the Titans. So I think for the Cowboys, it's definitely through the middle. Their forward pack is world class. It is, arguably one of the best in the competition right now at the moment, having the luxury of Taumalolo and Neem on the bench, Griffin Neem on the bench, huge. So Parramatta will really be looking to, get that ball out to our back line and trying to produce some sort of brilliance to try and beat this Cowboy side who are absolutely flying at the moment.
Same for you, John. How do you see each team looking to win the game?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our game against the Titans was not a prelude, but in a way a good warm-up to this because both teams in the Gold Coast Titans and the North Queensland Cowboys feature really solid forward packs with some really good workhorse players. Obviously, you got Tino Fa'a, Sulmala Ali, and Mo Fotuaika for the Titans in particular, but Ruben Cotter really jumps out here, but Tamalolo off the bench as well. But plenty of strikeout wide too. And in a way, Jaden Campbell and Scotty Drinkwater play similar with the ball in hand with that elusiveness and ability to threaten both sides of the ruck. So I think that not necessarily puts us in a good stead, but it does give us a chance to have played against a team that has some similarities. So I think that, like Spiro said, they're going to look to dominate the ruck. Any good team in the modern game, it always starts in the ruck. So they'll be looking to really gain ascendancy there. And who knows with the officiating what we're going to get in terms of 6 agains and penalties and all those sort of things. That'll be a big factor on which team gets the ascendancy through the middle. But
I'll tell you which team will get the least number of penalties.
Yeah, well, it's a near certainty, isn't it? Regardless of who's got the main whistle, but I think Atkins in this case would also. Our record under Atkins isn't great, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do get caned here. But yeah, I mean the strike power out wide they've got is also incredible. Murray Taulungi's a outstanding winger, obviously representative player. Valentine Holmes as well. Peter Hiku had a really good year last year. He's been a little bit down compared to what we saw in 2022, but still a good player. And Semi Valame, well, I know that Canberra fans were happy to see the back of him, but he's been really good for them. He's bagged a whole ton of tries, been a really solid contributor from the back three. So for the Eels, it's going to be about absorbing that early pressure 100%. And then, trying to win the long game with the likes of Sean Lane, Bryce Cartwright, Jermaine Hopgood in the back row. I think Junior's going to have to be leaned on here in a big way. No Reagan Campbell-Gillard means he is the lone, really experienced starting middle. Joe Ofengahi could be important in that regard too, working as a battery alongside Ryan Madison. So, yeah, our starters and rotators need to be on point. They need to be real sharp around the ruck. And then you just got to give Mitchell Moses and Quinton Gufferson the opportunities to win this game. Because if you give them those chances, you'd back them to take him. I mean, Mitch got one shot at field goal last week. He had offside players pressuring him. He aced it. Same with Quinton Gufferson. He scored a career highlight try from nothing and also set up the game-winning play with an incredible crossfield kick for Bowie Simonson. So those two boys just need a chance. And if our team can give them that platform, then I'll back us to win and probably what will be a fairly narrow victory, somewhere between anywhere from 2 to 10 points, I think.
Okay, so let's get into those scores. First of all, Spiro, your predicted score, your first try scorer, and then your prediction of who's going to be best on field.
And this is always a hard one. I'm not the best with predictions, but I'm going to say Parramatta 1 to 10. Let's say it's going to be 24 to 18 Parramatta's way. I think it'll be a fairly high scoring affair. First try scorer, I reckon Mitchell Moses. I don't know. I've just got a feeling that Mitch might go over first. And best on ground, Guther. I think he's going to pull off a real courageous effort. He was fantastic last week. I think up there, he'll be gutsy. He'll put in a really good performance and he'll really step up given the absence of some of our other stars, and there'll be pressure on him, but Guther always plays well under pressure. So, yeah, Parramatta to win 1 to 10, 24-18. I'm going to go, as I said, first try scorer Moses and best on ground, Clint Gutherson.
Okay, 40?
Yeah, I'm going to go just under 52.5 total with the Eels winning 30 to 22. First try scorer, we saw Reg get over last week, so I'm going to back Junior to work with Brendan Hands and get over this week. And if he doesn't get over, I think he might be instrumental to the first try. Best on field, maybe Sean Lane. I thought he built nicely last week after a, not horrid, but a rusty return the week before against the Warriors. And I think that he could be, if we're going to get the left edge firing, and we're talking about no Maika Sivo, no Dylan Brown, if the left edge is going to be a factor for the Eels, I think Sean Lane working with Bowie Simonson is going to be critical to it.
Yeah, I'm predicting high scoring as well. 28-24 to the Eels. First try scorer, maybe Brendan Hands for a sneaky one out of dummy half. And best on field, I'm liking what you're thinking about Sean Lane. I've got a feeling it's going to be Gutho best on field.
It's hard to go past him, isn't it? He's just so
it is really hard. And even after he had a real Ungutho-like moment last week when he dropped that ball in front of the posts and right before halftime, which gave the Titans the 2-point lead after they got the scrum penalty. He then, as you said, brought out some really huge moments later in the game, and I think he's going to really take on board the importance of this game and deliver for the Eels. Now, fellas, we move on to the excitement of the NRLW season opening match for the Eels, where they take on one of the new teams in the West Tigers. It's the debut match for the Tigers. It's at a big venue stadium in Combank Stadium at Parramatta. Spiro, that in itself is a big deal.
It's huge. It's a standalone fixture as well. So there's no NRL game after. There's no NRLW game after. So it's the main game, and it's a huge thing because it's the first time that Parramatta have done this. And as you mentioned, coming up against the Tigers, it's their first ever game in the NRLW. They've recruited really well. And there are a few former Parramatta Eels NRLW stars in their team, which I'm sure 40s will go through.
Yeah, just a few. So, John, can you go through the Tigers team list first of all?
Yeah, captaining them is a very familiar face for us. Botil Vetty-Welsh, she's at fullback, one of the superstars of the game. They got ruled out with that ACL injury she sustained for us at the very end of our maiden NRLW season. On the wings, they got Jakia Whitfield and Josie Lenars, who is, as we believe, 60 is the sister of Jersey Flegg prospect for the Parramatta Eels, Nicholas. So cool to see that familial connection there. In the centres, another former Eel, Rakia Horn, one of your favourite 60s. She was a great player for us. You got Leanne Tufanga as the other centre. Pauline Pele Rasavale is the 5'8". Emily Curtin at halfback. Then you got Sarah Togatuki, one of their high-profile recruits there at prop forward, with Christian Pio, another former Eel on the front row. Ebony Pryor is the dummy half. Kezi Apps, another outstanding recruit. Eliza Silata and Najvada George rounding out their starting back row. George, obviously another former Eel. On the interchange, Sophie Curtin, Lasana Lutu, Taylor Osborne, and Falau Vaki. Extended roster, Jessica Kennedy, Rebecca Pollard, Bianca Bennett, Salma Noir, and Imogen Gobran. And I haven't got the coach there, but I know that Mary Kay mentioned his name yesterday. But yeah, a very well put together team, honestly. There's some strike there, obviously, with Botil Vetty-Welsh, Kezi Apps, Sarah Togatuki, and some really good, sensible recruitment to get a pretty well-balanced team.
Who stands out for you in their team list, Spiro?
They've got star power right across the park. For me, the experience in the forwards, Sarah Togatuki is a great recruit for the Tigers. Kezi Apps and her experience, and Nevada George as well, compared to a Parramatta side that's probably lacking a bit of experience and finesse. Ruby Jean Kennard, this is really her first full season in the NRLW, starting at prop. Ruben Charrington as well, a real talent, but this is her first opportunity to start at hooker in an NRL game, NRLW game. Kennedy's obviously going to be huge for us, but I just feel that the forwards for the Tigers are going to make a huge difference. In terms of Bo Vetty-Welsh, you mentioned her. It's going to take her time to get back into the swing of things. It's been a little while since she's played NRLW. Rakia Horn, and a real talent for the Tigers in the centres, but I just feel that in the forwards and on the bench as well, having Lasana Lutu there and Sophie Curtin as well, huge assets for the Tigers. So they're the ones that stand out for me.
Okay, John, can you take us through the Eels lineup?
Mm-hmm. Starting at fullback, we've got one of our returning players in Abby Church, formerly playing centre and wing. She gets her shot at the custodial role. On the flanks, though, we've got Zawi Faye and Cassie Toihiku, a couple of young speedsters. Really looking forward to them this year. Mahalia Murphy and Chantel Stowers are the new recruits at centres. Murphy, a real powerhouse on that right edge. At the 5'8 position, one of the new faces, Pahuka Berryman Duff. Touch football background, we'll talk about her shortly. Captaining the team, or co-captaining the team at halfback, is Rachel Pearson. In the front row, one of the new recruits, Elsie Albert. She's going to be really important to how the Eels can dictate terms around the ruck. She's working alongside Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis as the prop forwards. Ruben Charrington, the dummy half. In the back row, Amelia Murphy, Talisha O'Neill, and the other co-captain and absolute energizer bunny, Kennedy Charrington. On the interchange, the reserve dummy half, Capri Payakau, Jade Vanua, Shannon Muru, and Madeline Jones. Extended roster, Monique Donovan, Kyra Simon, Kimberly Hunt, Rosemary Beckett, and Nakia Davis-Welsh. Todd Smith got the whistle for this one. So the girls actually get one of the best referees, in our opinion, in the game to call their opening round of opening game of the season.
I actually think that is a really good appointment to an NRLW match, just as an aside. But Spiro, who's going to be the key players for the Eels in winning this match?
Rachel Pearson's obviously a huge asset for us. New recruit in the off-season, State of Origin, halfback, come across from the Dragons. I think that her ability to steer this team around the park and the experience that she brings to the side is going to be huge. So keep an eye out for Rachel Pearson in that back line. Really excited to see Abby Church with another season under her belt, seeing what she can do at fullback, and Zali Faye on the wing as well. Played for New Zealand in the All-Stars match for the Maori side. So keen to see Zali Faye this season. And, of course, Kennedy Cherrington. She's our marquee, our big name, para through and through. She lives and breathes the club. So I think Kennedy's going to be crucial to all of our performances this year, but especially in our opening game against the Tigers at home, co-captaining the team. So Kennedy's mine to watch, but also Pearson in the halves and Faye and Church in the back line.
Yeah, no surprise to see this as the lineup that the Eels were going to start the season with, given the performances in the trial. It was a very good trial result. We saw how well the Eels work off the back of Rachel Pearson's kicking game. And we also got to see some long-distance tries. So we saw the pace in the backs, the power in the forwards backing up, that really backed up Pearson's kicking game. That was with the opponents of the Dragons. It was, of course, a trial match. There were lots of interchanges, basically teams swapping around at every break. It was played in thirds, so at every break there was massive team changes on both teams. So it was, although we got a bit of a picture, it's still, there wasn't the level of attrition as there is across the full halves and full game. But John, who stands out for you as being instrumental in the Eels winning this game?
Yeah, I mean, you immediately gravitate towards those experienced cornerstone players. Pearson at halfback, Albert in the front row, Cherrington at lock. They're the three sort of cornerstone players. But I really like what the flankers represent here in Faye and Toi Hiku. I think they're going to be able to maximise their opportunities. But for me, the player that I'm really intrigued about, and I figure that Rachel Pearson is going to hopefully free her up to be a little bit more heads up in how she attacks this game. But Bahuka Berryman Duff has that touch football background that some of the best halves prospects in the game have. You're talking about Taryn Aiken, Tamika Upton, Haley Maddock, Ash Quinlan, who was a former Eel herself. The ability to play fast and at speed and really attack that line of confidence comes from that touch football background. So if the Eels can really put Bahuka into a position to be positive with her football, I think she could be a real difference maker for us.
And Spiro, there's obviously a lot of unknown because both teams are real. Well, obviously the Tigers are a new franchise, but the Eels basically reassembled the roster as a lot of the teams did. It's massive changes from last season to this season. Even given the unknown, how do you see each team aiming to win this game?
It's hard to say. I mean, the Tigers, as I mentioned, their forward pack, Kezi App, former, she's still a Blues co-captain. Christian Pio as well. I think we saw what she could do last year, and Sarah Togatuki was brilliant at the Roosters as well. So I think that it'll be hard for Parramatta to really win the battle in the forwards. I know they've got Elsie Albert there and they've got Kennedy, but just Ruby Jane Kennard still getting a feel for it, even Murphy as well. And Talisha O'Neill, who's coming back to the NRLW after a little bit of a hiatus, I think they're going to really struggle in that battle through the forwards. And in the back line, Abby Church at fullback, I think she's going to be the one to watch. I think that they're going to need to get her clean ball. I mentioned Rachel Pearson as well. It'll all come down to her, how she steers the team around the park and how she directs the side. So it's hard to say. A lot of changes for both teams, but I think that the Tigers through the middle are going to be too strong. Parramatta are really going to need to aim up in defence, and they're going to need to make sure that their halfback, Rachel Pearson, steps up to the plate and puts in a really good performance. And Kennedy Cherrington, of course, as that Energizer Bunny in that role, gets this team up for the game, because the Tigers they're gonna want it. They're gonna be hungry for the win in their first ever game, their inaugural NRLW feature. Brett Kamali, their coach. So it's hard to say which way this is gonna go. But I think the Tigers are going to be too strong in the forwards. Parramatta really need their backline to step up.
Well, we'll get your actual score predictions in a minute. But, John, anything you'd like to add to that for how this game plays out?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Eels have the advantage when it comes to franchise experience with a couple of NRLW seasons under their belt now, whereas the Tigers are the new girls on the block. But they do have the experience of a Harvey Norman's women's premiership team, as well as a good recruitment that sort of dipped into that. A lot of players that rep them in the reserve grade fixture. So, yeah, it sort of makes it tough to split them because while the Eels have the home field advantage, and I think that could be crucial, the CommBank home ground crowd, the Tigers do have some really good strike among their marquee recruits, Vete Walsh and Togatuki and Apps. I will tip my hat towards the Eels here on the back of a good home ground advantage, but I think the Tigers can really challenge us.
Okay, so let's get those score predictions. The first try scorer, the best on field. Spiro?
Score prediction. I don't think it's going to be too high scoring, as is the case with a lot of these NRLW games. I think it's going to be probably 14-10 in favour of Parramatta. A tight 4-point win is what I'm predicting at home. First try scorer, Kennedy Cherrington. I'm confident that she'll just be bursting with excitement. First game of the season. So Kennedy as a first try scorer. And best on field, I'm going to go with Zali Faye. I think she's going to bag a try as well. And her skill out wide is going to be crucial to Parramatta and winning this game.
John?
Yeah, like I said, I'll tip a Parramatta win. The margin's tough. Maybe 24-18. I think for that to happen, we really need Kennedy and Elsie to step up and lay that platform in the middle. Going to lean on them heavily for big minutes. And outside of that, I really like the back three as the scoring options here. Church, Faye, and Toi Hiku. So I think the first try comes through one of them. Maybe if Spiro's predicting Faye to get on the board, I'll go for CTH, Toi Hiku to get on board first. Best on field, I think it's going to be tough to split Pearson and Kennedy Cherrington. So take your pick from those two.
Okay, I'm going to predict a 20-14 win to the Eels. I think first try scorer, I'm going to go for Talisha Quinn to get across first try scorer. So a try on the edge, and best on field, Rachel Pearson in that. So I think it's going to be an intriguing match. I've got my ticket ready to get out there on Sunday and cheer on the Eels. Spiro, that brings us to our point where we thank you for joining us for the preview. Again, looking forward to Saturday at Parramatta Leagues Club.
Can't wait, guys. Just once again, a quick plug, quick reminder, 1 to 10 this Saturday in Jack's Bar and Grill, the continuous call team broadcasting live from Parramatta League, the star-studded panel, Mark Levy, the big mom, Paul Gallen, Mark Piggy Riddell, Shane Flanagan, Matt Thompson, and Chris Warren. You'll get the chance to meet all the boys, take photos, get your autographs. We've got prizes on offer. You'll be able to watch the boys call 2 games live, as well as the fun and frivolity between 1 and 5. So make sure you're there. Looking forward to meeting some of the TCT fans that come along, and obviously looking forward to catching up with you, Sixties and 40 as well, if you're along. Looking forward to seeing you guys there at Leagues Club on Saturday.
Mate, it's good. And what better venue than to actually be in the bar where you can get a feed, a drink, and listen to the footy talk?
I was going to mention that, 60. Your line, grab a pizza, grab a beer, and come and watch the continuous call team.
If you've got eyes bigger than your stomach, there's a pretty good schnitzel challenge there too as well.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain that a bit further?
Well, it's not an official challenge, but they've got a good size schnitzel on the menu that would take, I think, most people 2 or 3 contributors to get down. But it's on a nice big wooden board, and it comes in with some sauce and sides, some salad. So, like I said, if your eyes are bigger than your stomach, you can order that one.
Yeah. I might have to give that a go.
Yeah, just over $40 for that. It's the biggest schnitzel you'd ever see. As 40 said, well, Yoko ordered it the other week when we were there, and she had no idea what she was about to get. And then when it came out on the board, this is no exaggeration. The 3 of us, so there was myself, 40, and Yoko. digging into the schnitzel, like taking bits of it. The three of us couldn't finish it. It was, it was an almighty piece of food to get through. So people might want to have a crack at that, but I warn them, it's something that's ideal for at least sharing, I would suggest. So if I get the chance, I'll try and send you the photos of what it looks like, because Yoko and a couple of her friends were going to try to have a competition who could get through a whole one themselves. And when her friends saw the size of it, they gave up. And and they went through. They got two between the three of them. And I can tell you that there was enough brought home that I got a meal out of it, and there was still food left over after I got a meal out of it. So, yeah, I'll recommend that to any punters that go down there.
Brilliant. Maybe the big man might have to put his appetite to the test. We'll have to put the eating challenge to him. So watch this space and make sure you're down there on Saturday. We might just reel the big man into an eating contest.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Spiro.
Great to chat, guys. Thanks for having me back, and looking forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Cheers.
Alrighty, so Spiro's out of here, 60s. It's time to talk the last two remaining games from the weekend. The doubleheader on Sunday out at Wentworth Park, with the Sydney Roosters hosting the Parramatta Eels in the Jersey Flegg and the New South Wales Cup. We'll start with the Flegg, the under-21s, 1:15pm kickoff. Eels looking to knock off, I believe, are they the ladder leading team in here? Let me just jump into the Jersey Flegg. Yes, they are. 14 wins from 17 games played, so they're doing all right. So a big task here for our boys, 60s, but they line up like this. Arpa Tweedle at fullback. You got Matty Komalafi on one wing. Terrell Williams has been named on the other. Richard Penasini and Lachlan Blackburn are in the centres. Blaze Talangi makes his long-awaited return from an injury in that representative city versus country game. He's going to be lining up at 5'8" alongside Ethan Sanders. In the front row, we got Noah Reid and Tony Natelli. Matty Arthur, or Buds, is at dummy half. Charlie Geimer on one flank with Will Latu on the other edge. Nicholas Lenars captains the team from lock forward. On the interchange, Ethan Martin brings some energy and the ability to cover a whole swath of backline positions. Lance Lima, Saxon Pryke and Sam Tuivasa give some beef to the rotation. Lachlan Mears-Crabb is the 18th man or the reserve player in case of concussion. And yeah, taking on this Roosters team, I immediately spotted one name there that we're familiar with, Caleb Towie, who looks like he's made his way from the Raiders to the Roosters after being a former Eel himself. But yeah, the Roosters flying high in this grade 60s. But our boys, on paper, the team's not too bad this week.
This is probably one of the most significant games, if not the most significant game of their season, because I think if they were to lose this, it starts to make it, maybe a fence too high to climb for them to qualify for finals football. But if you beat the table topping team, boy, you can start to carry in some momentum. They got the win last match. They want to have that win this match coming. They had the bye last week. They've still got another bye to come. Yeah, it would be an enormous victory if they can get this. And we should point out as well, and we did earlier, when we say Wentworth Park, this is not Wentworthville.
Yes.
This is Wentworth Park, as in Greyhounds, Wentworth Park.
Yeah, in the middle of the city, the old Greyhounds racing track there. Do not be heading out to Ringrose or the surrounds in Wentworthville. You'll be on the wrong side of the city.
That's right. So, looking at the team, and this is, if there's one thing that we know about lower grades football, it's very rare that you get the team that's named on a Tuesday that ends up playing on the weekend, because
the truth.
You only need some change to the NRL, and then you get the cascade of changes coming down. And given that we've already had Maika Sivo, who was named in the NRL team, we can maybe expect that some sort of change is going to filter down, unless they make changes from outside of the Eels system and go to a Ron Massey Cup team for any players that are called into the New South Wales Cup level. I've just got a feeling we're going to have a change or two to this team. But, of course, the big names to take note of is, as you said, the return of Blaze Talangi, partnering Ethan Sanders in the halves. Ethan, of course, off to, I was going to say greener pastures. Well, let's just say green. Let's just say green pastures.
I suppose green. It works both ways, but yes, definitely off to the lime green pastures.
Yeah, and you've also got, Tony Mattielli coming back to this grade. So you'd like to think he's going to stamp his authority playing in the middle with this particular assignment being in the front row. He's been playing on an edge. I guess we'll now see, is he better suited to the middle or the edge? And Charlie Geimer, outstanding form in the under-19s Origin last week. So really looking forward to it. And, of course, we've got that bench that is, apart from Ethan Martin, we're looking at the SG Ball bench there with Lance Fulima, Saxon Pryke, Sam Tuiviti. So now, in terms of how they're going to go, you know what? I saw last week a team that was back towards the form that they had played maybe 2 matches before that. Their loss that they had to the West Tigers was really, I think, one of the worst performances of their season. Like, it just, I don't know, they just fell out of their systems. Last week, look, honestly, I thought that was the best that I'd seen Matty Arthur play. Buds was he was as sharp as anything out of dummy half, and I think that went a long way towards the win. You know what? I'm going to tip a win here, mate.
I like that energy. I'm going to throw some optimism behind your cause as well. I think this is a very well-balanced team. I like having Blaze back into the team. I think he gives you a really nice dynamic outside of Ethan, or alongside Ethan perhaps. And, yeah, I think that a bit of if they get this win, then suddenly, you're keeping in touch with 5th place because it's a top 5 in this competition, and you're only 2 wins adrift. If you get the win here and then results go your way, you're maybe even just 1 win behind. So this is a big one. And
we don't want the alternative, but
no, yeah. If the alternative happens, then while mathematically you're still in contention, I believe, this close to the end of the season, you'd need pretty much every result going your way, plus you have to win out. So with their fate in their hands this week, 60s, I'm hoping the boys turn up and are real hungry for a big upset.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we look at a match which is, well, a grade that's been hard for us to preview in the last couple of months.
Preview and review. It's been real tough. And look, at one point the Eels were almost shoo-ins for the final series in this grade. They were travelling really nicely at mid-season point thereabouts, and then since that point, it has been just a slipperier and slipperier slope downwards, almost reverse exponentially or logarithmically, whichever way it goes, downhill.
I think they've only won 1 game since Jake Arthur departed the club.
Wow. And that was the first game after, wasn't it? They sort of rose to the occasion, and it's been all downhill then. Yeah, losing Jake was an important turning point, unfortunately, for this squad, and they now find themselves 1 spot off the bottom of the ladder, ahead of the team that they're playing this week. That's the good news, 60s. The 7-win Eels take on the 4-win Sydney Roosters. But looking at this team, they might be up for a bigger battle than they might have hoped for, given who's available for the Eels and who's available for the Roosters. Looking at the Eels, though, we start at fullback for this contest that kicks off at 3:00 p.m. at the same venue, Wentworth Park. Arthur Miller-Stephen looking to back up from what was apparently a pretty solid game from him in a loss, 60s. We have Hayes Dunster and Isaac Lumilumi named on the wings, Wanga Blake and Samuel Luizu named in the centres, but we know that with Maika Sivo now guaranteed that 4-week suspension, that one of those would be expected to jump into NRL duties, which means there's at least 1 change in the back line. That's before we get to the fact that the club named Zach Sini with a broken hand. So Sini's going to be out as well, which means Jordan Rankin will need a partner in the halves. But we move into the front row where you've got Kai Rodwell and Makahesi Makatoa on either shoulder of Jaden Yates. In the back row, Jack Murchie, young Jock Brazel making the jump into the starting team. That's good to see. And Dan Keir at lock forward. Interchange, another young guy, Jacob Davis, who I think has actually been all right in this grade, which is good to see. Jonte Junior Beth Meza continues his long run in the senior New South Wales Cup level, where he's joined by Jeremiah Sia and another young flag-eligible player in Brock Parker. So plenty of young players in this squad, which I suppose if you're struggling the way we are, you might as well, and we've spoken about these, especially for the forwards, these young guys coming in here and taking their lumps. And while you don't want to be raising young talents in a losing environment, I feel like forwards is like the spot where if you're going to put them in there, you can learn some important lessons about playing tough and rolling up your sleeves in a difficult environment.
And we already know that there's going to be a player from this grade elevated. It was named as, I think, Hayes Dunster was going to be elevated up to the NRL.
Did sponsor Hayes' name.
Yeah, so there's going to be a change there. Whether they bring in from Ron Massey Cup or whether they elevate from the Jersey Flegg team, we don't know. Again, you mentioned about Zach Sini. So I'd be stunned if they return to the well with Dan Keir playing out of position at 5'8". I think that's been a little bit tough for him playing in that spot. So
you've been asking to play for two left boots, haven't you? It's just not his spot.
No. So I guess they're saying, look, we like your utility value, but you have to think that there's options outside of that. But as we talked about before, it's been tough to find a way to tip the Eels. The way to tip the Eels this week is because they're playing a team which has struggled more than they have this season. There is nothing in the Eels New South Wales Cup form that gives me the confidence in predicting that they will win. The main thing where I believe that they can is simply on the back of, it looks like a strong enough pack to get the job done, doesn't it? It looks like a strong enough pack to be able to lay a platform against a team that's sitting below them on the table. So I'm going to be bold here, John. I'm actually going to predict an Eels win in New South Wales Cup this week.
If you're not beating the team seated behind you by a few wins as well, then who are you beating in this run home to, well, I'm not going to say the finals, but to the final round of the competition, because the finals are now more than a bridge too far for our New South Wales Cup team, unfortunately. But yeah, surely with a bit of pride at stake here, you'd hope that they can do something to arrest the slide and secure the 2 points against the Roosters.
Yeah, so, mate, I think that pretty much wraps up our extended preview episode. How great was it to have Spiro?
Oh, how good. Yeah, like we said, the prodigal son returning to the Premier Para podcast. A lot of P's there. A bit of alliteration. But, yeah, really great to have Spiro back, and looking forward to, hopefully, for me, catching up with him on Saturday. I know you will. But, yeah, fantastic. And I hope listeners enjoyed having Spiro's takes and opinions on Parramatta back on the podcast for at least one episode this year. We'll endeavour to get him back on, though, if the Eels can make a good run into the finals.
Mate, we'll twist his arm at the TGB continuous call.
We'll make an ultimatum to 2GP about the priorities for Spiro.
And also, mate, I'm looking forward to. We'll be catching up ourselves tomorrow night at Big Swing Golf at Northmead. Mm-hmm. We've got a little bit of a TCT gathering there. So a shout out to Big Swing Golf at Northmead, and of course also to Star Partners Real Estate Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta. We've got Greg from Star Partners will be joining us tomorrow night. So it's a nice catch up that we've got happening for TCT tomorrow night. But of course, thanks to our sponsors who make all that possible with our podcast, all of our content, because as we talked about previously with Mary, it actually costs money to run a website. People may not realise this, and it costs actually significant money to have a website going. And without the generous support of sponsors, it just wouldn't happen. So when we say without the support of our sponsors, it wouldn't happen. It actually wouldn't. So, or it would happen in a very different form to what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, another reminder that you've got the 2GB continuous call team happening at Parramatta Leagues Club on Saturday from 1 until 10 p.m. in our usual stomping ground, Jack's Bar and Grill in Parramatta Leagues Club. So make sure you catch up with Spiro and, of course, all of the big stars from 2GB. And they've got then the live call of the last couple of matches on Super Saturday, including the Eels versus the Cowboys from 7:30 p.m. John, thank you for your brilliant work again today. Thank you to all our listeners for tuning in again. And as we always say, go you mighty Eels.